Good afternoon, good people. I wanted to take some time early in this new year, new decade, and fairly new century to reflect on where we are, how far we've come since Y2K, and where I think we're headed as a nation and global community. The 21st century, no doubt, will be marked by innovative technological, political, and social change, not only on a local and national level, but across the globe. As we venture further into this decade, we will notice an increased level of interconnectedness with all the Earth's people, to the point that the price of tea in China will most certainly be relevant to what the price of sugar is in Iowa. Now we're barely 10 years into this 21st century, and we've already had numerous first-time occurrences. We've reached myriad milestones and witnessed scores of unexpected twists and turns that at varying times during the past decade held captive the collective attention span of the entire globe on a single phenomenon or phenomenal event. We witnessed at the turn of the century an American president literally steal his way into office. The very next year, we got attacked on our own soil and the World Trade Center disappeared before our lying eyes. The president that stole the election within 2 years started 2 wars, none of which were against a government that ordered the attack. We saw our economy spiral into recession, and we narrowly averted a repeat of the 1930s Great Depression. People were not only losing their homes in record numbers, they were losing their banks in record numbers as record banks and financial institutions closed their doors and went underwater along with the homes that they financed. We witnessed in the nation's capital and her surrounding suburbs a 2-man, 2-month murder spree with long-range rifles. Now, can you imagine ducking and hiding under your car while you pump gas because you're afraid of random sniper fire? I can, only because I saw it, and I even did it myself a few times. The last decade also saw death and destruction not brought on by man. We witnessed an American city flood and drown during Hurricane Katrina. While the incident itself was a natural disaster, the response or lack thereof of response was a man-made disaster. And it typified the level of leadership we had at the time. We witnessed on a global scale disasters of biblical proportion, with a tsunami in Southeast Asia and an earthquake in China. All told, almost 500,000 people perished in those 2 incidents. And that's just 2 incidents in a century, or excuse me, a decade replete with natural disasters. Our thoughts and prayers are with the people of Haiti today as they struggle with perhaps the greatest natural disaster of their country's history, and easily the greatest natural disaster of this decade. And we're only 2 weeks in. Don't get me wrong, the decade was far from all doom and gloom, and my overall belief and understanding is that we as a people are headed towards a kinder, more peaceful union and global community. But I would be lying to you if I said we would get there devoid of struggle. The last decade also saw us for the first time elect a black man as the President of the United States, and the first such progressive since John F. Kennedy. While his politics are a stark departure from the last guy that manipulated his way into office, there's a growing resentment of him by many in this country for not continuing the John Wayne style of governance. Even though it's a relatively small group, comparatively speaking, myopically opposed to progressive ideas, it's a very loud and a very well-founded group that in all honesty would rather the country go back 60 years to 1950 than fully immerse itself into the 21st century. Money and repetition have a strange effect on how people perceive history. It's for that very reason that we as American people need to remain vigilant about what's going on today, as well as know the truth about what happened yesterday. If you don't know the past, you don't know the present. And if you're unconscious of the present tense, there's no way you can accurately predict what's in store for the future, yours and anyone else's. Case in point would be Ronald Reagan. I was about 7 when he took office and about 15 when he left. Had not the 1980s been indelibly inscribed in my memory, I would have thought that Ronald Reagan was the greatest man since Gandhi, based on how people recall him today. His presidency, by all accounts, was a failure and widely acknowledged as such by even folks in his own party. The last decade saw his death, and I swear, along with them burying that old bastard, folks seem to have buried their memory of the 80s and all concept of cumulative effects. You never think that he came into office with a $700 billion deficit and left it with a $3 trillion deficit. Or the fact that he held the receipts for the weapons of mass destruction that led Bush to go invade Iraq. Or the fact that his administration was responsible for initially arming and emboldening Osama bin Laden. so as to thwart his influence, or excuse me, so as to thwart the Soviet influence on Afghanistan. Now think about this for a minute. He had a CIA arm and trained Osama bin Laden, and he sold WMDs to Iraq. How does that make him America's favorite president? I mean, what part am I missing? And then trying to do the same thing now with George Bush and Dick Cheney. If you ask anybody, they'll say, hey, they kept us safe for 8 years. I mean, really? I mean, what does that mean? I mean, how many people lost their house under Bush? How many people lost their jobs, their life savings? How many people fell into poverty from 2000 to 2008? George Bush is not what I would call a safety net. As it relates to terrorism, saying he kept us safe for 8 years is sort of like saying, well, since you took your Flintstone vitamins since you were 6, you didn't get cancer. I mean, it really is sort of the same thing. And anyone that used that argument, I mean, tell them they're a douchebag. Really, you're a douchebag. Speaking of douchebags, our new president, being the progressive that he is, precipitated another movement that has gained a lot of steam, called the Teabag movement, or the Teabag Party, or Teabaggers, whatever they call themselves. Now, these geniuses are what you call the quintessential douchebags. They will call Obama a socialist, a communist, all in the same breath, even though the two ideologies are on opposite ends of the geopolitical spectrum. That's like telling someone to walk right and left at the same time. They have mastered the art of repetitious drivel. And that's what I call when you hear and say something enough times, no matter how illogical or ridiculous it sounds, it becomes the truth to whoever is saying it and whoever is unfortunate enough to share that menial IQ. They have no concept of cause and effect, and they will totally ignore the causes and blame the effect on anyone or anything that strengthens their argument. Depending on who it is, you can tell them the sky is green, and sure as hell, they'll pull out their guns and come to a rally and fight for their green sky. Seriously, if Sarah Palin told them that they didn't start paying income tax until January 20th, 2009, I swear to you, these folks would erase all memory of ever filling out a W-2 form prior to Obama becoming the president. Speaking of Sarah Palin, boy, did she take the country by storm in the last decade. And while I agree with most people and most Americans that she's an idiot and unqualified to be the press secretary, let alone the president, I would say that her meteoric rise to political prominence is an overall good thing and a great American story. She gives slackers and regular Joes around the world hope that it's never too late to grow up and get your act together. I would say that for a person that took 7 years and 5 schools to get a 4-year degree in journalism, no less, is considered to be a slacker, at least as far as presidential hopefuls are concerned. I mean, becoming a leader of a major political party is a great feat for a slacker, even if the party is full of Neanderthals. So while I laugh at her and poke fun at her silly antics, I secretly admire how far she's come. I watched her debut on Fox News as a Fox News analyst last night, and there's never been a job more qualified for her skill set. What she lacks in journalistic integrity, she more than compensates with comic relief. She's even funnier once Keith Olbermann, Rachel Maddow, and Colbert get a hold of her footage. All in all, the next 10 years will prove to be as awe-inspiring as the last 10 were. We will see more change, more monumental achievement, more pain, more struggle, more class warfare, and more of the political pendulum swinging right and left. But so long as the majority of us remain conscious, vigilant, and spiritually rounded, the best of our yesterdays will continue to be the worst of our tomorrows. There's a Buddhist term called Kozen Rufu, and in a nutshell, it defines the overarching goal of achieving world peace and human happiness. Now, whether you're Christian, Muslim, Jewish, atheist, or whether you live in Nashville, Tennessee, or Soweto, South Africa, world peace and human happiness is a common goal of all people from all walks of life. And for the most part, if enough of us make it an effort or a priority to at least think on such humanistic goals, world peace in the absence of war will be that much closer to fruition. Thanks for your ear, and Happy New Year, Happy New Decade, and if I didn't know you in 2000, Happy New Century. Peace.